Hey everybody, this is Daniel Patrick, and this is episode number 175 of the Mandolins and Beer podcast, brought to you in part by my favorite website, The Mandolin Cafe. Hope everybody's doing well today. Also brought to you in part by Acoustic Disc. They just released Dogworks 5. So go there and get that. They also released a new Acoustic Encounters episode as well, so you can check that out over at Acoustic Disc. Be sure also to sign up for the email there because you get that free treat of the week. One free tune mailed to you each week. So definitely worth signing up for. And also brought to you by Grace Design Preamp. And, my guest today, he uses one. You'll hear him talk about that in a little bit. I use one as well. They're fantastic. So thank you so much to Grace Design. Happy St. Patrick's Day. If you're listening to this the day that this is released, it's the 17th of March. Happy St. Patty's Day. By the way, welcome to some of the newer listeners. Having Eliza on really brought the numbers up, so thank you so much for Eliza for doing that. It was a great episode, I think, and you might be also just turned on if you're a Billy Strings fan and coming to listen to this week's episode with Jarrod. And if you are, if you could just take 2 seconds and go over to Instagram and follow Mandolins and Beer, that would be awesome. Really, the numbers are really starting to get up there a little bit, so it's good to see. So welcome if you're new. My guest is Jarrod Walker. Jarrod returns back to the podcast. I got to see those guys this weekend in Charleston, both shows, and it was incredible. Like the fact that, bluegrass in an arena, wow, it's really incredible. If they come to your area, go see it. Don't sleep on tickets because they will probably sell out. Both shows here were sold out. It's always just great to catch up with Jarrod. And the best part, and I think you really can hear it in this episode, is I've been fortunate enough to have known Jarrod and get to meet him prior to just the explosion of Billy Strings. And he's just as nice and as humble and as kind as ever, and yeah, he's such a great player. And This is a fun episode to talk to because you can kind of hear in his voice, like this is uncharted territory for a band to become, especially in this genre of music and the genre he grew up listening to, like the old school stuff. This is unheard of, and they're still figuring it out. And it's really inspiring to hear Jarrod's approach on everything. So I'm excited for you to listen to this episode. Thanks so much to Jarrod. It was great to hang out with him on a Sunday afternoon for a couple hours, and yeah, it was cool, man. Spotless hotel room, by the way, too. Very impressive. My hotel rooms look like a tornado hit them half the time, it seems like. But Jarrod's was really, really organized. So anyway, great times. Hope everybody is doing well. By the way, he wore one of the Mandolin podcast shirts on the Sunday night show and been selling a bunch. If you'd like to get one yourself, go to mandolinsandbeer.com. I've got them in black and white, although the numbers are dwindling since Jarrod wore it. But yeah, that was really, really cool as well. I definitely did not expect that. So thanks to Jarrod for that as well. All right, everybody, let's get into the advertisements. Peghead Nation. With Peghead Nation streaming video courses in mandolin, guitar, banjo, fiddle, dobro, ukulele, and bass, you'll learn bluegrass, old time, and other styles from some of the most talented players and instructors in roots music. Who? Well, how about Sharon Gilchrist, Joe K. Walsh, Mike Compton, John Reichman, Aaron Weinstein, Myler Fibish, Chad Manning, and Ian Corey. Dude, multiple courses taught by many of those names, by the way. They have high-angle, multi-angle video lessons, downloadable notation and tab, play-along tracks, and plenty of tunes and songs to play. Best part is if you join any of Peghead Nation's video courses now, you can get your first month for free. Go to pegheadnation.com and use the promo code MandolinBeer at checkout. That's all one word. Northfield Mandolins. Let's build more than a mandolin together. Check out their website at northfieldmandolins.com or download their app at mandosummit.app for lots of special performance recordings, demonstrations, and special workshops. Tone Slabs. Slabs of Tone, the newest pick out there right now, and I love mine. Tone Slabs has got all the cool shapes, different thicknesses. Go to the website now, toneslabs.com, and get yourself a slab of tone. You will not be sorry. Pava Mandolins, dedicated to building for the impassioned player. They're built in Austin, Texas. Thank you to Pava Mandolins. Elderly Instruments. They carry Pava Mandolins. Go to elderly.com and check that out. Elderly Instruments is your trusted source for new, used, and vintage fretted and stringed instruments. For the experienced beginner player, their vast selection of mandolins, guitars, banjos, ukuleles, and did I say mandolins, includes all of the accessories and books to go with them. All instruments are inspected and set up for easy playability, and their down-to-earth and knowledgeable staff are there for help. They're in their 51st year. They're family-owned and operated. They ship worldwide, and you can visit them anytime at elderly.com. Let's get into this episode with Jarrod. And thanks so much for listening, everybody. Have yourselves a fantastic weekend. Cheers, everybody. Hey, just making sure. Cool. Yeah. All right.
Hey.
There we are. All right. Well, man, it's my pleasure to welcome back to the podcast, Jarrod Walker. Jarrod, how's it going?
Oh, it's going great. Thanks so much for having me back.
Oh, thank you for doing it. We're in Charleston, South Carolina right now. You guys played last night at the Coliseum, and it was incredible.
Well, thanks so much. Yeah.
So many questions. So much stuff has happened since the last time we did this, as far as just you guys as a band and you as a player and a person, man. And it's just, it's incredible. And, you know, like seeing bluegrass in arena on paper probably seems like a weird situation. Like, wow, you guys nailed it. Like it was incredible. I really was blown away.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's definitely weird playing arenas, playing oftentimes some traditional songs, like there's a song we do called A Robin Built a Nest on Daddy's Grave.
Yeah.
We played that last night, and it's so traditional. It's like never in a million years would I have thought that song would ever be heard in an arena. So I kind of get a kick out of that.
In your wildest dreams as young Jarrod, like, I mean, you grew up with bluegrass. So, like I grew up listening to like whatever Midwest rock band. So like to me, like the thought of an arena was like, oh, wow, playing arena. But did you ever like even imagine in your world as a bluegrass player that you'd be playing and not just playing, selling out arenas?
Definitely not. No, when I first joined Billy Strings, we were playing 300-400 capacity clubs, and that felt like a lot. And it was just a big shock to play for a bunch of people who both were standing up, because I was used to seated crowds, but standing up, and they knew the words to Little Maggie and Slow Train and some of these trad songs. So that was a trip alone. And it's kind of like watching your beard grow. It just every day it just gets a little longer, and it's kind of hard to realize. But then one day you look in the mirror and you're like, wow, I got a really long beard now. Yeah. And that's kind of how it is playing these arenas. It's definitely bizarre, but the experience is shockingly not that different than playing one of those clubs that we initially played, because more or less you can only see the first couple hundred people, and then it's just shadows. So if you don't overthink it too much, it's more or less the same.
What was the first show for you, like, where you were like, wow, this is even bigger than I expected? Because, like you said, it's like watching a beard grow, but I would imagine at some point you're like, wow, we're playing here, this giant place, and we're the headliner.
Yeah, I guess in 2018, maybe 2019, I can't remember, but we did shows opening up for Green Sky, and they were playing huge venues. And I remember specifically when we played at the Anthem, which is in DC, and that one, I don't know, it's probably 6,000 or 7,000 people, and it's pretty staggeringly big when you look out into that empty room, and there's a lot of space in there. just doing sound check and whatnot. And that's one that sticks out in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
But, we go back there now and it doesn't feel quite the same. You kind of get used to whatever you're exposed to. Still extremely thankful for all of it. But if every night I walked out on stage and was shocked by the amount of people that are there, it would be hard to perform. So you kind of get acclimated to whatever you are in front of night to night. But, when we were in Europe, we did a tour in Europe this year. A couple times actually went overseas. And those rooms were more similar to what we were playing in 2018, 2019. And sometimes when you're in a smaller room and it's more intimate, it's a little bit more nerve-wracking because you can actually see the expressions on people's faces as opposed to just, a sea of people. It's, for me, it's more intimidating playing for 50 people back in my hometown that I know than it is to play for 5,000 people who I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's the biggest transition you've had to make as a mandolin player, and again, used to playing into a stationary mic and now moving to these bigger stages? What's like some of the challenges that you face? And like you said, it's quiet on stage. It's all in-ears except for the bass and one guitar amp for Billy.
Right, more or less. Yeah, it is pretty quiet on stage, almost silent. But I'd say there are a few adjustments. One is trying not to play super hard because, the natural tendency when you see a lot of people in the crowd is you want to bring a lot of energy and you kind of want to match the energy of the crowd. But, playing mandolin is often a finesse kind of thing. You can't swing a tennis racket like a baseball bat.
Right. What a great analogy. That's a good one, man.
But that was one thing that I had to get used to. Also, just using a boost on for people who don't know, on a DI, which is what you plug your mandolin into just to amplify it, and in lieu of an amp, there's oftentimes a boost that you use for your solo, and it's set at a certain level. And so, you're playing your rhythm, then you turn on your boost, and it's time to take the solo. Just learning how to play with dynamics while your ears are plugged with in-ears. It's like wearing headphones, and trying to talk to somebody. It can be a little tricky. Sometimes you're speaking louder than you thought you were. That took a lot of trial and error, and it still is something that I'm trying to figure out. Bluegrass is naturally more conducive to small rooms where you can hear the nuances of the instruments and you can play off of each other. You have a few mics and, the person who's soloing just steps up to the mic and things are kind of naturally mixed. You might not even hardly hear the fiddle at some points or the banjo. You'll hear whoever is up at the mic, and those Flatt and Scruggs and Stanley Brothers kind of bands, Bill Monroe kind of bands, they were masters at doing that. And this is something completely different, while at the same time trying to get a similar effect when we do play traditional songs.
You guys do it. I didn't really know what to expect to see. I've seen plenty of theater shows. I've seen plenty of theater shows that don't sound great,
Sure.
And you guys sounded great. I was blown away, man. And you could everybody, like just people around us, or people walking out, or people I saw this morning who were at the show were just like, good Lord, you know? And, again, like you said, like you don't have the ability to mix yourself. You're kind of counting on, almost like a third party to be like making it sound good for you guys. So,
Right. Yeah. Our sound guy, Andy Lytle, who's been with us shortly after I joined, probably a good 6 months or so. But he has things really dialed in, and we have people running in-ear monitors, and there are a lot of people working out there to make us sound good, and you just have to trust that they're doing their job. And so if I play soft, I have to assume that if I'm playing too soft, he'll turn me up, and if I'm playing loud, then he'll turn me a little down. And I think just knowing that kind of puts us all at ease.
Yeah, I bet. And he, like you say, he's been with you forever. And it blows my mind to think about this guy who, like I can't even look at it. If we could go to a little bar right now, and you and I could figure out how to turn the PA system on, no matter what, figure it out, get sounds.
I don't even know if I could do that.
I bet you could. But like, I couldn't walk into a place like that yesterday and be like, oh, yeah, I can get this on. I mean, the learning curve, even for somebody who's got experience, it's still got to be pretty staggering. So kudos to that dude. Every time I've either seen you guys or, listened to a live stream, I'm always really, really impressed by, the sound you guys get, especially being plugged in / direct mic and with effects. It sounds great.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's taken a long time to get things dialed in to where they are now, and ideally it'll sound better tomorrow too. So,
did you have to do did you do big pre-production rehearsals for like when you started doing like arena runs? Did you have to sit down and go into like a big sound stage and be like, holy cow, we have to?
No, but that would have been a great idea. No, we kind of gradually moved up, like I was saying earlier. We just kind of slowly moved into these bigger venues, and it kind of organically, naturally took shape.
Cool lights and everything too. The screens and the effects and stuff that are going on, and it's a whole nother, just another incredible part of the show. Like even the back wall, I didn't even realize so much watching the show. I turned and looked, and I'm like, oh, there's like a whole light show on the back wall I didn't even realize going on.
Yeah, there's so much going on that we don't realize on stage. It would be very distracting if we could see all the lights changing and all the screens and everything. So I forget sometimes that all that is going on. And then, I'll look back at some pictures and I was like, oh, wow, that looks really cool, Yeah. But thankfully all the lights and all that stuff, if we make a mistake on stage, it helps cover it up a little bit.
Right.
It's a little distracting. So
sure. A lot going on. You guys always change your set lists up pretty dramatically, show to show. How far in advance do you know the tunes for the day? Do you have to sit down pre-gig and be like, can we run whatever? We haven't played this in 5 months.
Well, we try, and pretty successfully now, because there are a few albums to work with, we try not to repeat anything from night to night. And especially if we're on a 3-night run somewhere, we won't repeat any song from night to night, because a lot of people go from show to show. They go out for an entire tour, and we see a lot of the same faces in the front of the crowd. But it depends on the night. But we never know what we're going to play until sometime in the afternoon, generally. But more or less, there are only going to be at most 3 or 4 songs we're not all that familiar with. So it's, generally speaking, it's pretty a reasonable ask, to learn those songs. There was a point, I guess it was 2020 or 2021. We played a new song every show, and a completely new song that we had never played before. That was just kind of I think that kind of naturally happened too. I don't think we set out to do it, but then we realized that we were doing it, and we just wanted to see how long we could keep it going.
Yeah.
And I don't know how long we kept it going, but quite a while. But for instance, what time is it? It's almost 4. It's almost 4. I know what we're going to play tonight.
Okay, cool.
Last night at this time, I didn't. And we usually get together an hour before the show and, more or less goof off, and then realize we have to go on stage really soon. So we run through stuff really quickly and just see how it goes. And generally it goes pretty smoothly.
What about breaks? I'd like the breaks kind of, do you have an idea of when you're going to take a solo in those songs?
With the originals, it's pretty set in stone. And even the traditional ones that we play, we've played those so much. Well, we played them for years without a fiddle player. And now we have Alex Hargraves playing with us. So every once in a while, I'll look at him to take a solo where I generally would have taken the second solo.
Oh, yeah.
If the banjo kicks it off, generally speaking, the fiddle goes next. And, I mean, traditionally, like the guitar isn't even playing a solo, until the past, 40, 50 years. So, but generally, if we hadn't gone over a song at all and it just gets pulled out of the hat, most likely it's banjo, fiddle, mandolin, guitar. That's kind of the general sequence that it goes in. But we switch it up because that would get boring if it was completely predictable like that. But if none of us know who's going next, that's a pretty safe assumption.
Alex fits perfect. What a great addition to the band.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
Is it weird having a fiddle player for you now as a mandolin player? Is it what do you think that adds for you as far as a player goes, now having another sort of the same register? Does it free you up in any sort of ways to experiment or play a little bit differently than you maybe would without a fiddle player?
Well, I guess I take probably 15% less solos now, which is nice because I get to save some of my ideas. But no, having him there to maybe chop while I'm taking a solo, or just it adds so much, because up until he joined, there was no instrument that had sustain naturally like a fiddle does. A dobro rings out, a fiddle rings out. The other instruments are pretty staccato. And so having him there, that just kind of opens things up, and I don't have to worry about keeping the rhythm nearly as much as I felt like I did in the past, just because, it just makes things easier having somebody there who can cover that ground that in the past was almost solely occupied by my instrument's register. So it's nice. It adds, a certain lushness to the music that it didn't have before. I always felt when we played with a fiddle that it'd be nice to have it, going forward, But it was just a timing kind of thing, and it took a few years to get it to where it made sense for a full-time fiddle to join. But John Mylander used to play gigs with us, and he's out with Bruce Hornsby and doing a bunch of stuff on his own, his band Forecast. But it was always, it felt like I got a raise every time the fiddle came.
Yeah.
It adds a certain amount of freshness to the sound. Yeah, and Alex is definitely one of the best. He can play like Kenny Baker, and then turn around and play like, Stuart Duncan and Billy Contreras, and he's got a great knowledge of bluegrass, and then he's studied jazz, and he's a great player.
Yeah, it's really cool to see him up there. So
yeah, I guess he's been with the band about a year now, which is crazy.
I remember seeing the proposal online.
Oh yeah,
that was great.
Yeah, I thought that would be a good idea to formally propose to him. I didn't think that Billy would actually do it, but I'm glad he did.
Yeah. What's the you have a new mandolin since the last time I saw you as well. A lot of people always speculate what you play. I see sometimes on the forums or the whatever Facebook groups are talking about instruments. So,
well, on stage I still play my 2016-17 Weinman mandolin. That one sounds the best on stage. When certain instruments, might acoustically sound really good, but then you put a pickup in it and it just sounds really bad. And it can be the same exact setup, which is what happened with my newest mandolin that I have, which I love it acoustically. It's a Gibson distressed model. Some people think it's a Lohr, but it's not. And if I had a Lloyd Lohr, I wouldn't put a pickup in it.
Right.
So that's kind of the indication it's not a Lohr.
Right.
That's a little sacrilegious. I think people would form, a mob if I did that. But I put the same pickup, which is a K&K, in that mandolin, ran it through the same DI, and it just sounds artificial when it's plugged in. And so that's just my second mandolin on the road. I carry two with me, one for stage and one for rehearsals and just, warming up and all that stuff. Or if I break a string, it will work. It just doesn't sound as good.
What year is that, the Gibson?
I think it's a 2014. I think.
It is interesting though to even with the biggest stage stuff, and like the high end stuff you have now, that it's all really dependent on some mandolins when you plug them in and when you put a pickup in them, like how it sounds, because it's not just your fingers anymore. It's a whole lot of power.
For sure. And I'm sure there's probably a way that I could, with some kind of EQ pedal or something, get things really dialed in with that mandolin. But that's a road I haven't really gone down yet. But I'm sure there's a way. But I mean, there are a lot of great mandolin players who you've heard their recordings and it sounds fantastic, and then when you hear them live, it hardly sounds like a mandolin. It almost sounds like a guitar. It's just a trial and error and just kind of luck of the draw thing. That mandolin I've been using, I've kind of got lucky with that one. And same thing with Billy, he's bought a lot of nice guitars, and the one that generally sounds the best on stage is still his original Thompson guitar that he's been playing since I joined the band. And same thing with Royal. our bass player. He's gotten basses since, and they just don't sound as good. So we kind of got lucky the first go around. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but that's just the way that it went down.
What's the so you got a KK in there, but you also have a clip-on?
Yeah,
well? Mm-hmm.
I have a clip-on mic, which is both lines are 2 channels are sent to the front of house, and it's more or less 50-50. It's just DI and then the mic. And the DI is generally just naturally on the brighter side, and that's what usually sounds more artificial. And then the clip-on mic is generally a little darker and sounds more like the actual instrument itself. So the combination between the two generally results in a pretty natural sounding, more or less natural sounding mandolin. It's not going to be as good as just a standalone mic. Nothing sounds as good as that does. But when you're playing like these arena shows, it's impossible to crank that stuff up without just a whole world of feedback. So a lot of people, online are critical about plugging in instruments, which is, I get it. It doesn't sound as good. Like, we are the first ones to admit that. But if you want to play these venues, you just got to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a trade-off.
It is.
And by the way, it sounds great. Does it sound exactly like your mandolin if you were sitting in front of me? No, but I've been to smaller shows where it sounded worse. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
You can tell that you guys have spent a lot of time on your tones. You guys are at a level no other bluegrass band that I can think of has been at. I mean, I love Bill Monroe. He's the father of bluegrass, but even at his height of fame, I wasn't there, but I'd imagine it was not like this. I mean, you guys are like the Beatles. Sometimes you see fan artwork and there's making dolls of you guys, and you know what I mean, like stickers of you guys, and of each. It's wild.
It is very wild. It's very bizarre, because a lot of the artists that I have the most reverence to, in my mind, never played shows at this level. And in my mind, I will never reach that level that I hold them to in my mind. And so, an artist like Townes Van Zandt or somebody like that, he was still and still is more or less obscure. As many people that know him now, a lot fewer knew him, when he passed away. And I don't think he was selling out 1,000 capacity clubs, let alone, the places, that we're playing now. And that's just one of the many artists that, that music means so much to me. And it definitely becomes like an imposter syndrome kind of thing, because we all feel very grateful, but we're like, why me? That kind of mentality. But you gotta keep that in check a little bit, if you want to keep playing those shows.
Sure. It's like a responsibility. It's like a different responsibility. I mean, again, it's like uncharted in this genre of music, but like you still have a job to do, even if you're like, well, how is it happening? 8 o'clock rolls around. Doesn't matter how it's happening.
Right.
You have to go out and make sure, you do what you do, and which is why you're there in the first place, because what you do is really, really good. and still based in the authenticity.
Well, it's we're trying. We're trying to. It's interesting to try to navigate the different worlds, because there are a lot of people who, as you said, think it is either too traditional or not traditional enough, or there's too much jamming, or there's not enough jamming. And I think a lot of people assume that when you're playing shows at this level, that those comments go unseen. But a lot of times we do see them. Like, most of the time, like, if I see stuff like that, I don't want to get involved, but I see a lot of stuff. It's like, oh, Jarrod seems off tonight, stuff like that.
Oh my God.
It's like, well, maybe I was, maybe I wasn't, but you just can't pay too much attention to that stuff. Because a lot of times, a show that I think is like one of my worst of the tour, some people will be. It almost always happens like this. When I think I played good, just kind of crickets, online, and if I think I played really bad, that's the best show of the whole tour, in the court of public opinion.
Do you think maybe, those nights where you feel like you're playing good, maybe is because you're playing differently, and the nights that you're not playing in your mind, like having a good night, you kind of shift to tried and true. Like, well, I know if I play this lick, it's gonna kill every time. But maybe the night that you played best, you're like, I didn't even have to rely on that lick. I was, and so maybe people are like, to you, you're reaching out and growing as a player, and other people are like, well, where's the wheedly wheedly?
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's my signature lick. Yeah, I think there is a lot to what you just said. The tendency to want to play something completely different is sometimes more self-gratifying than it is necessarily the best musical route to go, because there's probably a reason that I'm sick of a certain way I play a solo, but I developed that solo from trial and error, and I might be really tired of playing it, which I more or less never play the exact same thing, but sometimes I want to start it off, up high instead of down low or something like that. And that's not always the best thing to do. Sometimes what you've worked out over the years is the best way to play it for you. Put somebody else in my position and they might play it best completely differently. But it's kind of a theoretical discussion. Like, what is the best way to play this, and how do you play your best show? Is it I guess the best thing to do is just to listen to the people around you and try to make them sound better, And I think a lot of times if I think like, man, I really killed it tonight, then I was more focused on my individual playing rather than the sound as a whole. And people aren't listening to one instrument the way that it sounds in my ears. I might be thinking about my solo on something, but more or less people are not going just for the mandolin or just for the banjo or just for the guitar or whatever. They're going, a lot of people are just going for an experience, and it's and that's something to think about too. To a lot of people, it's just the experience of going to a show, going to an event, going to an arena is fun. And for example, I don't really care about sports, but I like going to sporting events because it's a spectacle. And it's kind of, for a lot of people, it's that way. You know, there are a lot of people out there in the crowd who are not diehard Billy Strings fans, and they might not ever go to another show for one reason or another. Maybe they will. Who knows? But the light show, that's a show all on, you know, itself. The videography, that's another show. And then you have the music, and there's so much going on where I think it's just most important that you seem like you're having a good time. And a lot of times, if I'm really concentrating on my playing, I might not appear to be having the best time, even if I feel like I'm playing my best. But, you know,
interesting. Yeah.
If I want to play my best, I probably just sit in a chair and don't look at anybody and just look at my hands the whole time.
Right.
You know, that's probably my natural inclination is to do that. So that's something I try to think about.
Everything I've seen, I watch as many live streams as I can if I'm not gigging or doing anything like that. And I mean, I don't know, you just always sound great. You always make me, you know, realize I need to practice stuff. You know,
well,
your
that's how I feel when I listen to myself. I just need to practice.
How do you find time to practice right now when you're on the road? I mean, you know, today we're in a hotel room, so you know them, but you know, with like the traveling and you guys are in a bus, I'm assuming now.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot of practicing going on. It's just things are so busy. I oftentimes don't have a mandolin with me. Sometimes they're on their way to the next city.
Oh wow!
You know, we got 3 buses and like 5 semis, and you know, so like if I need my mandolin case, like they've got to like go get it out of a semi or something. So it's but the long story short, I should be practicing more. but sometimes you need a break from the it can be very much like a sensory overload kind of thing, you know, and a lot of times I don't want to listen to music. I don't want to do anything music related. Like we're in my hotel room right now, and like I've got golf on the TV yeah. And I don't even play golf. It's just it's the complete like getting your mind off of things that is sometimes very necessary just to reset. You know, and we play, you know, about 3 hours every night. So that's a lot of practicing in and of itself, you know. So I think if I had more time, which you can always make time, but I'd probably just do more metronome kind of work. I think that's one of the more beneficial things that I could do.
What are you plugging into as far as you got now? Does the mic go into a preamp and then the K&K go into a preamp as well?
I have one preamp, and that is the Grace Design Alex, yeah, however you pronounce it. It's the middle of the road. It's not the smallest. It's not the biggest. And I'm not exactly sure, like if I had to set up my own gear right now, I'm not sure that I could. Actually, I know that I couldn't, because now we're wireless and we got all kinds of stuff going on, you know. So I don't even know the answer to the question.
Sure, yeah, no worries, man. What pedals are you like aside from the preamp? Are you using like any effects? I know we talked about it before. I think you had like a freeze pedal or something like that you had been using. And
Yeah, I've got this this freeze pedal that it's like it looks like a piano foot pedal. And I'm trying to think what the name of the brand is. I think it's like a German made pedal. It's very good. And I use this Eventide pedal, which has the capacity to do like, hundreds of different sounds. But more or less I only use a couple. And one of them kind of makes like very ethereal kind of like, it's like classic crystals is the setting
right.
that I use, whatever that means. It's a very vague term, but it kind of describes it. It's very twinkly. But I have a couple reverb pedals, and I'm always trying to find new stuff that is conducive to a mandolin, because everything's made to work with an electric guitar. Even an acoustic guitar is more suited for pedals than a mandolin. It's once again pretty uncharted waters, but I just go to some pedal shops. There's a great one in Nashville called Eastside Music Supply.
Oh yeah.
And they have a lot of boutique kind of pedals that are, I'll go through a bunch of them and, try them out. And sometimes it sounds great in the store, and then you take it into a venue and it doesn't sound as good. And so again, how do you know that until
right. Right.
they don't let you just go try it out. You got to buy it and then just like be like, okay, well, I guess there goes $400,
right. I'm going to run to Bridgestone Arena and just try this out real quick.
Yeah. Do you mind? Yeah. But I bought one recently. It's called, I think it's from Earthquaker Devices.
Yeah, I love their pedals.
And it's I think it's called like Astral Destiny. It's a pink pedal. And that one has some pretty it's just kind of what's the best way to describe it? I don't know. It's another one of those kind of ethereal sounding sounds of the heavens.
Right.
One of those pedals sounds very lush and kind of gets buried in the mix, which when things like break down or some jam is more soft, and I don't need to be playing a definitive chop or something like that, I'll bust that out, or one of the like reverb pedals.
Fun.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Sure.
But
it's kind of magic, though, right? When you don't expect anything, and then all of a sudden it works, and you're like, "Hey, here we." It's a new thing to do now, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've got I do have a delay pedal, which is that's something that can be tough. Is just like is getting the timing of the delay to work correctly.
Yeah.
I think I got it working a couple times last night, but it's a little nerve-wracking sometimes when you go to turn on one of those pedals, it might just be a complete disaster.
Oh man.
And it's very apparent when you turn on one of those more aggressive pedals, like it can sound really good or really, really, really bad. And also just kind of throw the whole band off, because if that delay is not set to the right tempo, if you didn't tap your foot right, if you're just a little bit off, then it can sound really bad. So you got to reset that, and doing that all on the fly is it's a lot. Billy definitely has the more intricate setup with his pedals, and I mean he's got so many where there are pedals in a road case behind him that are all plugged in, and he's got a board in front of him which is all connected to those pedals, and so he's, I don't even know how many he's got going, but he's been able to find some really cool sounds that I don't know if you can even replicate them on mandolin.
Yeah, there were a couple last night that were like almost like an envelope filter, but even wilder.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking like, hey, I don't think you could plug a mandolin into that. There's maybe not enough bass response to get like that.
Yeah.
Like that.
Right.
Really wild sweep,
Right. I've tried those envelope filters before.
Uh-huh.
And it just didn't work for me. It works well on fiddle though. You can kind of get because the notes are a little softer, just like a little bit more round on a fiddle. So you can kind of get away with that a little bit, but mandolins can be pretty harsh.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of it's hard to find the right combination of pedals, because also you don't want to just necessarily become a pedal mandolin player. You want to be proficient at the instrument itself and just use the pedals as just an extra tool to make you play better. But sometimes like the pedal is so specific where you can only use it on one song. And I have bought pedals just so I could use it on one song. And that's okay. And then it doesn't get,
Right.
extremely worn out, and it stays a little fresher. But it's hard to apply them in a musical way a lot of times, especially when your main job is as a rhythmic instrument, when you're playing the snare drum role of the band. It's you got to be careful that you're not just getting a little carried away.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a great mix of music all night, like it seems, I won't say unpredictable, but like, I don't know, like it seems like every show is completely different as far as the dynamics. Like you guys came out swinging last night with like, we're going deep, first song in, it seemed like it was like already, but like I've seen other shows where you guys are just hard driving and straight ahead for a few songs. And then, I think it's a good way to mix it up and not be so reliant on, technology.
Right.
Which again, I think that goes back to why you guys are so successful. You guys can play in front of one mic and do what you do. Or you can play you can plug into all the pedals that you can find at a Guitar Center, and play a set of music like that as well. But it comes back to that fundamental, which, sometimes gets missed,
right.
And like, oh, I've got lights and pedals. That's all you need, right?
Right. Yeah, you gotta. I think it was Sam Bush who said you have to be able to play bluegrass before you can play newgrass, and it's very, very true. Those fundamentals are often not as attractive to somebody starting out playing, but ultimately, you gotta learn those fundamentals. You gotta get your timing, pretty solid, and get your tone pretty good before you start worrying about making crazy sounds.
For sure.
Because if you don't have those other things, then nobody is going to care how crazy your sound is.
Yeah, because you just got to still be able to play.
Right.
You know, are you guys? Do you guys ever plan on? Are there ever going to be openers? Are you guys just like doing the 3 hour thing? The two sets is that?
Well, when we opened for bands, it would generally just be we play a short set, and then they play like 3 hours. So it was it didn't necessarily, at this point, it doesn't make sense for us to have openers, because you have to sound check, and then you have to break things down, and that's extra work for the people involved. And maybe at some point we will, but at this point there aren't any plans of it.
Also, congratulations on the Song of the Year for IBMA.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that's great. That's a whole nother facet of your world. Your brother's got a single out that Tim O'Brien sings that you also wrote.
Right. Yeah.
Great song as well, man. So is it the same sort of thing? Are you able to write on the road, or is it, I know you don't have an instrument necessarily all the time with you, but
every once in a while I do. I wrote a song with Billy that we have been playing a good bit on the road, called Gone a Long Time. And that one we just wrote on the bus.
Oh, cool.
But we haven't done that very, very much. More or less what I wind up doing is making notes in my phone of just, of interesting things that I hear, or just ideas, or, lines or whatever. And whenever I do sit down to write, I have those to pick from, and I'm not starting from scratch. And I write most of the songs, like the ones that you mentioned, I wrote with Christian Ward, who is my longtime friend and a great fiddle player and a great songwriter. And we were constantly writing, and we have a bunch of songs ready to go, for whether they get recorded, with Billy, or, the one that you mentioned that my brother, Corey, recorded, Tim O'Brien singing that one. And that was just one that we had kind of laying around that, I'm happy with how that song turned out. I mean, having Tim O'Brien sing one of your songs is very, very cool for me, because he's one of my favorite singers and writers and mandolin players. I mean, fiddle players and guitar players too. He's just a fantastic, triple, quadruple threat of a musician. And so that was very cool. We've got a song that the East Nash Grass, which is a band that my brother and some other people are in. Harry Clark, who I know you've interviewed at some point. And so we have a song on there called Magic City Gray, which will be coming out probably in the next few months, I would assume. But that's one that I pitched for the first Billy Strings record that I was a part of, the Home, and it got passed on for that record. So it's nice to have that song getting some life, But yeah, love songwriting, and it's a good outlet, creative outlet outside of playing mandolin or singing or whatever.
Yeah, well, you're good at it. That helps too.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Do you write on guitar?
It's usually easier to write on guitar. It's a little bit more forgiving, in the songwriting process. Also, I think it helps that I am not as critical about my guitar playing as I am about my mandolin playing. So it helps me to not have as much of my ego attached to the playing side of it. That way I can kind of focus on the melody and the lyrics of the song.
It's a good segue, because now I have to ask what it was like to play Tony Rice's guitar.
Oh gosh, it was incredible. I mean, that is the sound of definitely my childhood and a lot of my adulthood too. It's just such a legendary instrument, and it really opened up after playing it for just 15, 20 minutes or whatever, collectively between Billy and myself and the other people in the room. It really has some special qualities to it. It's not a very loud guitar, but it sounds a lot better when you play it just, I don't want to say delicately, but like if you're not playing super hard and you're not slamming it, it really responds really, really well. Of course, Tony, would really dig in at times, but it's got low action. It's kind of a smaller neck. If you try to play, Tony Rice licks or Clarence White stuff on that guitar, it makes a lot of sense. It plays very well. It responds very well to that style of playing, which is very interesting. It's kind of embedded in that guitar.
Man, that's like just so much incredible history and music has been played on that thing, man.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
To play around one mic, I'm trying to think where we even were. I guess it was Winston-Salem is where we were. And Tony's wife, Pam, she brought the guitar, along with a buddy of mine, Lucas White, who kind of helped orchestrate the whole arrangement. He's close with the Rice family. She okayed, or actually kind of suggested Billy play it on stage. So for the encore, we played around one mic, and we're kind of on a pretty skinny catwalk up in front of the stage. Yeah, that's a new addition to the stage, but it's pretty skinny up there. It's probably no more than 5 or 6 feet wide. And so standing up there, playing into that mic with Tony's guitar right there, which is a very valuable instrument, yeah. Trying not to fall off the stage or bump into that guitar with my headstock. Yeah. That was a little nerve-wracking.
It's giving me anxiety just looking at you telling me the story.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we were all thinking about it while we were up there, but gosh, can you imagine? Like, that would have been so terrible.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure the internet would have ignored it.
Oh, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Well, dude, I just couldn't be happier for your success. You're like the nicest guy. You're a great player, and like I can't think of like a nicer guy. All this amazing stuff is happening too, and I'm just stoked to see what happens for you next. And I love your playing. I'm looking forward to hearing whatever you record next, and thank you so much for getting me in these shows too. It was really appreciative and just a blast to check it out.
Of course. Well, thanks so much for having me again. Love the podcast and love getting to talk to you.
Yeah, man. Anytime. Seriously.
Well, we'll do it again.
Perfect.